All right, fair warning up top, this was not an incredibly productive month for me photography-wise. That's not entirely true. I did put out some cool videos this month that I'm really proud of, but all in all, I really only shot like 4 rolls of film. And to be completely honest with you, I'm not really crazy about any of them. Every film photographer knows that the hit to miss ratio is always in flux, and it's not like the more that you do it, the more hits you're going to make. At least, that's not my experience. There's this bangers only mentality that I actually think is pretty damaging to creatives, and it's important for me to recognize that. And this isn't me being coy or falsely claiming that my photos are hot garbage like Jason from Grainy Days does in his videos. I legitimately think that October was just a busy month for me, and I got to the end of it thinking that I had taken more photos than I actually did. So with that out of the way, I'm here to talk about my 5 favorite photos that I took this month. But first, let's take a little lazy stroll over to the kitty corner and see what's going on over there. And now let's talk about my favorite photos of the month, starting with this. This photo was taken on Harman Phoenix 200 with the Bronica SQAI. So I knew I had to start with this one, given that I'm going to be releasing this video on Halloween. Actually, when this video comes out, I'll be on a plane going to Minnesota for a job. So if you're watching this on Halloween, take a look at the sky, and if you see a plane, maybe I'm on it. Maybe give me a little wave. I'm probably not on it, but it's fun to pretend. Anyway, this photo was taken on Harman Phoenix, which you could watch my whole video about that I released last week. I like this one because I think it's one of the better representations of the possibilities of Harman Phoenix. They just released their film in 120 format, and rightfully so, the film community was pretty excited about it. I got my hands on a roll and shot this with my Bronica, went out for a long walk somewhere in Brooklyn, and you know, living in New York City, you can kind of sometimes feel like you're living in a bubble separate from the rest of the world. I grew up in the suburbs of Connecticut, and it was very common to see Halloween decorations all around this time of year. But in New York City, I think sometimes there's this myth that the hustle and bustle keeps people from enjoying the, I don't know the word, but the like frivolities of everyday life and the simple life. And I think that that's just honestly a stereotype of New Yorkers. If you come to New York or you go to Brooklyn, you'll see plenty of stoops and staircases that are adorned with decorations such as this. And most of the time, I just pass them by. I don't really feel the need to photograph them. And I don't really know what compelled me to take a photo of this one in particular, other than maybe the way that the light was hitting it, the angle that the light was coming in, and just the composition that I was able to capture with it. We have a lot of these diagonal lines traveling down to the left. A lot of them are intersecting, leading our eyes, obviously, to the orange pumpkins and the bright yellow flowers. I just think visually, compositionally, this photo takes me back to a time of remembering what it feels like to celebrate holidays, especially Halloween. Halloween was always my favorite holiday growing up. My birthday is in October, so I always just kind of co-opted Halloween as an extension of my birthday. But anyway, yeah, I like this photo because when I shot Harman Phoenix in 35mm, I think I, like a lot of other people, was pretty dubious about the film's capability and just about Harman being able to perfect it in any meaningful way. But I think when I shot it in 120 and I saw all the work that they put into it in the last year, you really see the possibilities and you could see where this film is going to go in the future. I think this is a huge step up for Phoenix, and this is an image that kind of goes to prove that. I don't know. I don't have much more to say about it, so I'm going to end that there, and let's move on to the next photo. This photo was taken on Rollei Infrared in the Bronica SQAI. You may recall earlier in this month I put out a video about shooting portraits on infrared film. I was very eager to test out some portraits with infrared film, knowing that it was experimental, knowing that it wasn't going to look quote unquote pretty, but sometimes it's important to just ask questions like, what if I did this? And then just go out and try it. So that's essentially what I did. I contacted a coworker of my girlfriend's, her name is Amelia, who said she was interested in being photographed. And I said, hey, I have this cool project coming up and I'm looking for a human subject. And luckily she was on board with it. I definitely had to prime her up front. Sorry, my glasses are dirty. I definitely had to prime her up front and say, you know, these photos are going to look pretty weird. Just make sure you know that going in. And I think that she was receptive to that, or at least interested in the images that we got of her. This one was easily the best on the roll. I did a bunch of before and after, so I'll show the before. And just to clarify what I mean by before, I'm saying before I added the infrared passing filter to the lens. So when you don't use an infrared passing filter on Rollei Infrared and you meter your film at 400 ISO, it just reacts as standard black and white film. But when you add the infrared passing filter, you block out all of the visible light and you're basically only allowing near infrared light to be transferred onto the film. So looking at a photo like this is kind of marvelous in a way. And these are the times when I get really romantic about these things, because the idea that what we're looking at and what you're all looking at on your screen is this light at a wavelength that we typically can't see with the naked eye. And I think that that's incredibly fascinating. And it's a bit of a marvel of human ingenuity that we're able to concoct the necessary ingredients and chemicals, and we're able to come together as a species and create something like this. You know, every now and then thoughts like that creep in when we're doing things like this. I think it's easy to look at the way technology has advanced to this day in the last 100 years or so. We have computers, we have microchips. Have you ever seen a microchip under a microscope? I mean, it's incredible. It's like, how the hell did we ever get to this point? But I feel the same way about a lot of technology that came before computers and stuff. It's like infrared film has been around for a long time, but I cannot believe that we were ever able to discover how to create it. Now, I'm not trying to pretend that I'm some infrared film guru or anything, but it is definitely something that has piqued my interest recently. And I think it's because of that inherent uncovering of some sort of mystery, some sort of hidden truth. When we say things about objective truth, we could sometimes remind ourselves by looking at a photo of infrared light being recorded onto a strip of film and remind ourselves that there's no such thing as objective truth, that there is something else below the surface. But anyway, yeah, that's me getting all philosophical about this photo. If you want to hear all of my thoughts on this, go check out the video that I made about shooting infrared portraits. I'll put a link in the description, and I'm going to move on to the next photo. This photo was taken on Expired Fuji Pro 160S in the Pentax K1000. So I've done this plenty of times in the past where I do a little bait and switch and I show you all the kitty corner and I say, here's all the photos of my cats that I took this month. And then I come over here and show you another photo of my cats and say, it's one of my top 5 of the month. But frankly, this photo is just amazing to me. I know that I feel like I say this every time, and I'm not going to focus on this photo too much because I have talked about my cats quite a bit on this channel, but this photo in particular is interesting to me. Just sort of on a compositional level, but then also because of the lens flare that's popping out of the left side of frame is sort of right where Kirby is looking, and it's almost like there's some sort of godlike figure or some sort of, like the briefcase from Pulp Fiction or whatever is right on the edge of frame, and her eyes are opened up in front of it and she's marveling at it. And I was able to nail the focus pretty good, which is always a plus. She's got her mouth open a little bit and she can't believe what she's seeing. I don't know, this photo just makes me really happy. And it also was taken on expired film, which is extra cool. I shot it on Expired Fuji Pro 160S, which I have a video coming out about next week. And yeah, not really much more to say about this. I just think compositionally, we have a nice little swoop from the bottom left corner up to her ear. And there's even this line from the wall behind her that is, again, drawing our eyes to her eyes. And yeah, I just thought I'd share this one to reiterate what I said back at the top of the video. I was struggling pretty hard to find photos that I was very happy with, but I came across this one and I was like, you know what? I'll talk about it because I do really like it, and I always love an opportunity to highlight my cats on film. This photo was taken on Harman Phoenix 200 in the Bronica SQAI. Okay, so this is another one that I shot on Harman Phoenix in 120, and I was out on my walk. I went over to Kent Avenue, and there's this park over there in Greenpoint, and I was just over there by the water, and I thought I'd maybe try to take a landscape photo of Manhattan from Brooklyn. And I saw this weird cement block thing sticking out of the water, and I just thought it offered a really nice foreground element for this wide landscape shot. I also figured it would be pretty nice to test the limits of Harman Phoenix and take a photo of a very high contrast scene. The general rule of thumb when shooting Harman Phoenix is that it doesn't handle high contrast scenes very well because you're most likely going to lose the shadows. You're going to lose information in the shadows. So we had all of this shadowy area that was down in the bottom left corner primarily, and obviously the highlights of the city and the sky beyond it. So I thought, why not test it out? And the film actually held up way better than I was expecting. I typically, for scenes like this, just use the meter that's attached to the viewfinder on the Bronica, and it really hasn't ever failed me. Insert that like Simpsons movie meme where he's like, hasn't really failed you so far. Yeah, this photo just is sort of pleasing to my eye. It's a bit of what I like to call a layer cake of a photo because we have these pretty clearly defined sections of the photograph. We have these like little rock section at the bottom. Then we have this mid section, which houses the cement structure. And then we have the skyline that separates the sky from the water. And I think that's another thing to note is the way that the colors are sort of separated. It goes from like brown to blue to a little bit of brown and red to more blue. I think that makes it pretty effective and a pretty effective layer cake. It's almost like if you were eating a cake, it'd be like cake frosting, or whatever. I also think that this photo doesn't work if that cement structure with all the graffiti on it isn't there for whatever reason. It just adds this element to it of keeping your eye moving, like your eye can start at the back end of it, move to the front, and then up to the city. I think that a photo like this does lead your eye, or at least it leads my eye. Another underrated element of this is the reflections in the water on the very bottom by where the rocks are. I think if all of that was just black, or if all of that was just brown and muddy mud and rock, I don't think this photo would look as good. But I think that because we get a little bit of blue sprinkled in on the ground over there, that keeps the photo interesting. It almost kind of bookends the photo in a way with a little bit of blue on the bottom, and then we go to brown. So it's, again, we're talking about a layer cake, a little bit of blue, then brown, then blue, then brown, then blue. And also we get a really good glimpse at the halation that you can get when shooting Harman Phoenix. If we look at the buildings that are in the skyline, and I know that not everyone is a fan of this when it comes to shooting film. I think a lot of people prefer a cleaner look and they prefer the remjet layer to be intact. But personally, I like it, especially in a scene like this. I also want to get a little romantic again and just say that seeing New York City under construction is certainly annoying, living in a place where there's drilling and banging going on all around you and there's scaffolding everywhere. It definitely isn't like the most appealing thing about living in New York City. But it does bring me to a place of wonder and almost gives you a glimpse at the history of the city, like if this is how it all came to be. You know, there were people 150 years ago who were building the skyscrapers that we all walk next to without a second thought today. And they were probably like, oh, I can't believe there's all this scaffolding everywhere. It makes the city really look like shit. But here we are in 2024, and we're like, wow, that's pretty marvelous that all of this exists. And I think that sometimes I have to remind myself that if I'm ever annoyed at construction going on in the city or at these buildings going up, I think about someone 100 years from now looking at that building that's being built and thinking, wow, I can't believe that exists. You know, I think it just goes to show that like times of discomfort often lead to moments of marvel. There's probably a more elegant way to say that, but I'm recording this pretty early in the morning, so I'm going to leave it at that. This photo was shot on Kodak Ektar in the Mamiya C330. So this is from a portrait shoot that I did with Amelia that I somewhat showed you all earlier with that infrared photo. This obviously wasn't shot on infrared. It was shot on Kodak Ektar in the Mamiya C330, which is a camera that I'm still a little bit hot and cold on. And maybe it just happens to be my specific camera that I'm struggling to use primarily because of nailing focus and because of the focusing screen that I have on my camera. Sometimes I could have a hard time seeing through it. But anyway, I've been trying to use it more and more and trying to get more comfortable with it. And I got to say that I'm very often surprised and pleasantly surprised with the photos that I get out of it. And this one is no exception. I mean, I know I just said I struggle to find focus, but it really feels like I nailed the focus on this one right on her eye. And when it comes to shooting portraits, I feel like I have a lot to learn. And I'll be the first to admit that. Not just in terms of like the actual active photographing of another person, like the actual act of being in a room with someone and asking them to go in certain poses or certain positions or something like that. It's something that I definitely still deal with. I have a lot of trepidation, a lot of doubt about what I'm doing and am I doing the right thing or am I capable of having good ideas? You know, I deal with all of that stuff all of the time. But luckily, Amelia is a total pro, and she had plenty of ideas that I was happy to roll with. She seemed to really respond to lying on the ground, and I had to take this photo at kind of a weird angle because the C330 has a waist-level viewfinder, so I kind of had to stand over her and peer down and awkwardly kind of hunch over the camera and make sure that she was in focus. And yeah, I also just think that the choice to photograph someone upside down is inherently interesting, just the way that you can take a photo of someone in a position we typically don't see them. It immediately is going to draw your eye, and this photo in particular just draws my eye every time. Like when I see it in a gallery of photos and I see this one, there's something very pleasing about it, and it could be the way that Ektar has rendered the colors, and there's really only a few colors going on here. We've got brown, red, and white. And on that note, this was a semi-successful photo shoot and portrait session, but it is something that I'm trying to get better at, and it's easier to go into a portrait session when you have a very clear vision in mind and you know exactly what you're trying to capture. It's a whole different thing when someone shows up and they have a bunch of clothes and then you're like, yeah, let's take photos of you wearing everything, and we'll do multiple poses and we're shooting on multiple formats. For this shoot, I was shooting infrared, I was doing Ektar in the Mamiya, I was shooting expired Fuji film, and I was also shooting digitals. So just bouncing back and forth between everything got to be a little chaotic, but I think overall we got photos that we wanted, or at least that I wanted, and got a few happy accidents in there as well. This one in particular is probably my favorite of the session. There are a couple others that I really like that I shot on film. Maybe I'll play some of those while I'm talking here. And I'm not really including the infrared ones on this, but yeah. This one turned out very, very good. And it was a little bit surprising because when I'm shooting on the C330, I never really know what I'm gonna get, but that camera is, I'll admit, slowly winning me over. That'll do it for this month's edition of Photo Recap. I hope you all enjoyed my probably incoherent ramblings. I know I did. I'm gonna go pack for that upcoming work trip to Minnesota. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, hit the bell to be notified when new videos are released on the channel. Share this video with any of your friends or just spread the word. I'd love to get more people involved in this channel. You can support me and support the channel by going to my print shop, consider buying a print. You could also support me more directly by going and watching this video about a novel that I self-published earlier this year, back in the summer, and you could consider buying a copy for yourself or for a friend. Christmas is coming up. It is the time of giving. Maybe consider buying a copy. Also, here's a long shot, but I'm gonna start promoting it here, I guess. If you're into movies and you like those videos that I make about movies made for photographers, people seem to be enjoying those. If you're someone who watches my channel and you like movies, maybe consider following me on Letterboxd. I write reviews of everything that I watch, and I am constantly watching stuff on there. So if you want to connect that way through your love of cinema and your love of movies, go ahead and follow me on Letterboxd. The link will be down in the description, or my username will probably be somewhere over here. And with that, yeah, it was a semi-successful month of October. Not the best, certainly not the worst. I hope I got a good video out of it, and I'll see you all next time.